Welcome to Pursuing Justice. I am Harriet Hendel, and we are doing a series, the last few podcasts and ones coming up, on conviction review units. And last time we had the pleasure of having State Attorney Andrew Warren on, who is the founder of the unit. He is the state attorney for Hillsborough County, the 13th District. So today we've invited TERESA Hall, who is the executive director of the unit, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her role and ultimately go into a case that was overturned by the unit. Welcome, TERESA, to Pursuing Justice. It's a pleasure to have you as my guest today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk about the wonderful work we're doing here in Hillsborough County.
Absolutely. You've been a public defender, a judge, a prosecutor, and an attorney for 19 years. When did you assume the role of director of this conviction review unit?
The unit was being created in 2018, and I was hired to finish the creation, which was October of 2018, so right a little over 2 years now.
Oh, just 2 years. And in those 2 years, did you have experience with a conviction integrity unit beforehand, or was this very new for you?
This was brand new for me. The good thing was I was able to take all of my experience from those three areas, and it really did fit in creating the conviction review unit. But I had no experience, and if you look across the state of Florida with the other units, none of them had experience either. They were all new into these positions.
All right, so tell us a little bit about conviction review units or conviction integrity review units in general.
Sure. They began popping up around 2000, 2007, 2008. California and Texas first created a few of the units in their large metropolitan areas. And they really took off then around 2014 when you started seeing more progressive prosecutors being elected into county and state positions. And they were created so that the prosecutors armed could review their own cases to make sure that their conviction was solid, and if there was something wrong with the conviction, that they could seek to overturn it. And that was a great criminal justice reform step that a lot of the progressive prosecutors across the United States began to take. So since 2014, there really have been a proliferation of conviction review units in larger metropolitan cities. I think now in the end of year 2020, we have I think we're almost to 70 across the United States.
Wow, I had no idea there were that many. That's incredible.
Yes.
Do you ever have an opportunity to talk to people in other conviction integrity units?
Absolutely. Here in Florida, we now have 5. There are 20 judicial circuits. We have 5 of the 20 have conviction review units. We meet as a group, sometimes monthly, sometimes every couple of weeks, depending on what we have going on, so that we could collaborate, share documents, share experiences, because we all are new within the positions, and the units in Florida have only been up and running for 2 years. But I am working with Indianapolis to create their first conviction review unit. I've consulted with Denver. I've worked with the Fair and Just Prosecution, which also has an arm for conviction review units. We will collaborate with anybody that wants to talk with us and discuss different ways to make the unit work.
Oh, that's great. That is great. What kind of I hear some background noise. What kind of cases do you generally take?
We will take any, here in the 13th Circuit, we will take any felony conviction, and we always prioritize the people that are incarcerated first. However, we don't have a requirement that it has to be by a jury trial. So in other words, let's say somebody pled guilty but they did it because they needed to get out of jail, or they did it because of pressure, and really they were innocent, we will still review those cases. However, the cases have to be, there has to be a statement saying that the person didn't do it, that they're factually innocent. We don't review sentences. We don't review procedural issues. We don't review cases where they said, well, yeah, I did it, but the judge was mean to me and they gave me a stiff sentence. We're looking for people that are truly factually innocent of the crime that they were convicted of. And those are the cases that we're concentrating on.
Now, my next question, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you, what do you look for in a case? Can you be specific for our listeners and explain that to them?
Absolutely. When I get a petition in, I look to see what they're saying. I'm looking for some of the factors that go into the most common reasons that people are wrongfully convicted. So, for example, if they say, well, I falsely confessed because I was being pressured and it was an undue influence on me, I look for those kinds of things. I look for witnesses that might have been an alibi witness that never spoke to the jury, that never got to testify. I look for that. I look to see if there's evidence that can be tested or retested, especially in these older cases where DNA might not have been in existence. DNA was in existence, but the testing wasn't there to be done. I look for prosecutorial misconduct and police misconduct. Some of those are the most common reasons that people are wrongfully convicted. So I'm looking to see if there's any claim that fits those, any of those criteria. Misidentification is the last one. That's the fifth one. And then I look to see if there's any evidence that they're giving me that the jury didn't get to hear. What we won't do is second guess the jury. So let me give you an example. Joe was convicted of murder, and 5 people testified that, yeah, we saw him with the gun and we saw him chase the victim and shoot him. And then there's some forensic evidence that points to the fact that Joe did it. And Joe simply writes to me and he says, well, those witnesses really weren't that good. And maybe, one of them wasn't quite telling the truth. But the jury got to hear it all. If the jury got to hear it all, then I'm not going to look to overturn a conviction like that. Mm-hmm. Where we really get into looking at overturning convictions is where evidence wasn't tested, or people didn't get to testify, or we find out that the person that did testify truly did lie about key components of their, that led to the conviction. The things that the jury didn't get to know are the things I'm looking for.
I see. That's very interesting. Now, can you explain your role, and also, I am sure you don't work alone, and the roles of your staff, and how many staff are assisting you in this unit?
Sure. I have, counting me, there are 3 full-time staff members. There's myself, my paralegal, and then a retired law enforcement officer that is duly sworn to be a law enforcement officer. He's my investigator. We then have a second support staff member that helps as our, if our work is ebbing and flowing, that when we're busy, she's there to help as well. But I utilize law students a lot, probably more than any of my counterparts here in Florida. I have an excellent working relationship with the Stetson College of Law here in Gulfport, as well as Western Michigan Cooley. They send me law students, and I really have developed a program to use them to help me with these reviews. So they're not full-time, obviously, but they're a wonderful resource to have. And so that makes up our team.
That's fantastic. I know from experience, the Innocence Project of Florida, where I was on the board for 6 years, we use law students from the school, what is it, FSU in Tallahassee?
Yes.
Yeah, so that what a wonderful experience it must be for these students to get involved in cases like this. I think they really look at how a miscarriage of justice happens. And maybe, who knows, maybe some of them will go into working with innocence projects across the nation or conviction review units. That would be fantastic. Now, how many requests do you get in a year's time for help?
In 2019, we had 168, and in 2020, we have had right about 125. There have not been as many in 2020, and part of that is in 2019, I received a lot of requests for people that were not convicted in Hillsborough County. Mm-hmm. And there's a jurisdictional requirement. I can't look at convictions that occurred over in Clearwater or up in Jacksonville or over in Tallahassee. I'm constrained by Hillsborough County. And I think as the word has gotten out and people know what the criteria is, I'm not getting nearly as many requests that I have to outright say no to because they're not in my jurisdiction. So right now, like I said, I think we're right at about 125, 130, and we still have December to go.
So when you have to turn a case away, let's say it is within your jurisdiction, what would be a reason you would say we can't handle your case?
Yeah, well, one of the most common reasons is they write to me and they don't say that they're innocent. They don't give me any evidence to research, mm-hmm. and they basically just want to talk about their sentence, that they were sentenced harshly, or they've been reformed now that they're in prison and they'd like for us to modify their sentence. That's not my role as a conviction review unit. And I would say that's by far the most common reason that will get just about an immediate, I'm sorry, I can't help you, letter. And then I would say the second common reason is they basically say, I didn't do it. And then that's all they say. Mm-hmm. They don't tell me any facts of to show that they're innocent. They don't tell me about witnesses I could go interview or information that they've learned. I will look at the case, just even though they just give me that bare bones, but it won't get a full review if what I'm looking at appears that the conviction should stand. I need more than that. I need something to go on to look at.
Sure. Now, once you say we will take your case, there is enough information here, and it's within your jurisdiction. How long generally does it take to complete a case from start to finish?
Sure. Keeping in mind that most of the cases we're reviewing are what I would call complicated criminal prosecutions. They're murders, they're robberies where people were killed, they're serious child molestations or rape. So there's a lot of material to go through. The case that I'll talk about in a little bit where there was an exoneration, I had to read 3,000 pages worth of material before I could even start an external investigation. And so that takes time. And so usually I can tell you that most of my investigations are complete with the full investigation, testing and interviews. I haven't went over the 14-month mark yet. I may, because COVID has really slowed us down with interviews. I can't go to the prisons and interview people. And so we've gotten slowed down a little bit on some of the interviews. So we may go past 14 months, but we have a target that we get done everything we can within 16 months of receipt.
Oh, that's really rapid fire. That's terrific. Now, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, because compared to the Innocence Project, at least the Florida Innocence Project, it's an average